In today's tutorial, we will learn how to create stunning animations for your websites or apps that look like this without any coding, just by using an online tool called LottieCreator. If you're a UX designer or a web developer, then this one single video will help you create beautiful motion graphics and attract high-paying clients. I'll show you how to create Lottie animations from scratch using Lottie Files, use their latest motion Copilot, and export your work for your website or app using Lottie Files. Finishing this course on time will get you a printed certificate. My name is Ansh Mehra and I educate businesses all across the world about design and technology. So without further ado, let's get started. This video has 3 chapters. In the first chapter, I will explain you what exactly Lottie Files are and how they're different from a GIF or a video and how exactly do we even make them. Next, I will teach you how to make a Lottie animation from scratch using keyframes and shapes. And in the end, we learn how to export a Lottie file for your website or app. Now this video is for complete beginners. Today, we will learn the basics of using LottieCreator. And if you like this episode, we can have more upcoming episodes where I will deep dive into interaction and motion design as well. But before that, you need to get your basics sorted. Let's start with chapter number 1. Now you're probably wondering, what exactly is a Lottie file and how is it different from other formats? Let's understand this with an example. Assume that you're making an app flow where you're putting things into a cart. Can you see this animation? For a very long time, this animation was either a GIF, a sequence of PNGs, or an MP4 video. Issue with these 3 formats is that they occupy a lot of space inside an app. They require extra effort for editing, they play in a very laggy way, and because of big file size and performance and compatibility issues, most developers face a tough time integrating them in their products. And to edit a GIF or an MP4, you usually need softwares like Adobe Photoshop or After Effects, which are tough to learn for a beginner. Lottie Files solves all of these problems very easily. So instead of a GIF or an MP4, you can create a .lottie file inside of LottieCreator without downloading any software. So it all happens on the internet on their web platform, and you can simply give that Lottie file to your developers. Let me show you how it works. Alright, the first thing you need to do is go to your web browser and type lottie.new. You will have to create an account, and once you're in, you will have access to creator.lottiefiles.com, which is the Lottie Files creator. Now this is a web app and it's all for free. You don't need to download anything, and it will work on almost every laptop out there. So don't worry, this will work on your computer. Now, before we go deep into how this works, I just want you to understand the entire user interface. So let me give you a tour of every single important item. In the center of our screen, we have the blank canvas. This is where we will actually create our animation. On the very bottom, you have your player controls. So you can either go to the start of your animation, go back 1 frame. And what do I mean by frame? Mostly the animations that we create will have 30 frames in 1 second. Do you see this on the right side? You see this FPS thing? This stands for frames per second. And right now this thing shows the duration of my entire scene. So the way this works is that you have this one single scene. Within the scene, you have bunch of elements coming in, and you can set a duration of that one single scene, and it can go on loop, right? So if you have a 3-second scene, if the first frame and last frame are identical, when it goes on loop, the viewer will not even know when is the animation starting and ending. And that is what happens in a bunch of loading animations. Then you have go forward by 1 frame, go to the very end, looping just for your own preview. And then you can also preview your animations in the player. On hover, you'd realize that for every single action, you can see the shortcut as well. So for preview in player, you have Command P. Now on the very top, we firstly have our main action menu where we can create a new file, make a copy of our file, or go to our dashboard. Now, what is the dashboard? It basically gives you access to all of your files in one single place, and it also gives you access to a lot of free tutorials, a bunch of their premium animations that you can just download and edit. If you want to go deeper into the documentation, they have a developer portal that will have all important Lottie file documentations and step-by-step instructions of how do you include these in your app. Then we have the move tool, which is pretty straightforward. And if I were to insert any specific asset, right? So you have this get started menu. If I simply take this bell and put it in the center, by default, I will always have the move tool enabled. Now there's one more thing which is called move anchor. And to explain this, let me show you how you can create a shape. So right next to this tool, we have all of these different shape tools, right? And let's just say I go and enable the star tool. I'll simply drag, and if I hold my shift key, I will create this star in a uniform manner, right? So let's just assume that I want a bunch of stars right on top of my bell, right? So I'll take this thing right here. And once I have selected a shape, you'd notice that there's this small little ellipse right in the center of my shape. And this is called an anchor point. Now imagine the anchor point being this center of gravity for all of your shapes. If I rotate my star, you'd realize that it is rotating, making sure that the hook, the fixed point of my shape, is in the center. So this anchor point is technically that hook. Now, if I were to select the move anchor option and drag it to maybe this corner, now when I rotate, you'd realize that my star is sort of rotating towards that one single midpoint. And if you don't want to change the anchor with your own hands, on the very right side under the properties panel, you can realign your anchor point in whatever way you want. So it just becomes really, really simple. And of course, in the upcoming videos, we will understand why does this even matter. But I just want to show you how the anchor and anchor point even works. Next to our shape tools, we have the pen tool, which basically means that you can create your own custom shape. So I can just create a closed loop. And as soon as I do that, by default, I would have a black stroke and a gray fill. On the right side, once you scroll, on the very bottom, you will have the appearance properties that we will cover in just a few minutes. But basically, you can add a solid color or a linear gradient or even a radial gradient, and you will be able to change their alphas. So when I say alpha, it basically means the opacity of the color. If this color is fully visible, it means that I am at my 100% alpha, which means that it's 100% opaque. And if I were to go back here and reduce this alpha, you'd realize that my stroke has almost disappeared, right? But let's just cover the basics for now. We have our hand tool that basically allows me to pan around. We have the zoom in and zoom out option. You can always use the shortcut key because it's way faster. And on the left side, you can also upload your own assets. So technically, all of these animations do require vector graphics. So you can either upload your own assets, which is supposed to be an SVG file, or you can choose something from the Lottie library as well. So if I go and say, open this from a specific URL, you can go to the Lottie website and pick any free animation and just paste the URL. It would have everything imported very easily. Now, if I go and click on discover animations, we will have a bunch of free animations that I can easily use. We will get into this in a while. The duplicator feature helps you create multiple copies without spending too much time. The kinetic typography panel allows you to add text. So if you want to say alarm, and let's just say I want to have a very specific font right here, maybe choose an interesting color. You can probably just, choose something that fits your vibe. You can also use the eyedropper tool and maybe choose something which is from the color scheme. As soon as I do that, you would see that I would have my text inserted as a vector file, right? So sometimes if you want to add text in your animations, you can do that as well very easily. One of my most favorite features is AI prompt to vector. So sometimes when you're going through their library, you can't really find something which suits your needs. So you can basically say, give me a big heart with glitters, right? And you can always choose a specific type. So it can either be a flat icon or a logo or an illustrated scene or a UI set. I would probably go with flat icon. As soon as you click on generate, you will be able to create your vector from scratch, which we can further animate using their motion Copilot. So I don't even have to go through the entire complication. By the way, this animation right here is also a Lottie file. So you can obviously see how smooth and seamless it looks when you use it in your product. Once your creation is ready, you can simply click on insert and it will be added to your canvas. And then in the end, we have Motion Copilot, which is by far my most favorite feature, simply because I no longer need to animate small things on my own. I can simply select any of these items and say, make it shrink super fast and come back, and simply press enter. So I don't have to manually edit all of these items one by one, right? So I can have Motion Copilot just show me how the animation would look like. So I have this preview right here. What I will do is I will make sure I've selected the right layer and then simply click on this icon. And once I do that and close Motion Copilot, you would see if I click on play button right here that it is shrinking it very, very smartly. Now, of course, I can scale the entire thing, sort of keep it right here, change the keyframes in a way that is comfortable to me. It all depends on how you prompt it, all the details that you put inside your prompt, like always. Now, on the very right side, we have a bunch of different alignment options. If needed, you can always keep things very, very simple. So let's just say I go back to my Discover Animations and let's just say I take this gift box right here. So I can simply drag it to my canvas and put it this way. And what I can do is I can go to one of my animation presets and you have in, you have highlight, and then you have out. Basically, if you have something coming into the frame, these templates would work well for you. I can simply select slide in bottom, choose fast and apply preset. And once I do that, you can see that my gift is now popping in and it's sort of, just showing this happy glimpse, right? Now you can notice how I have this groovy gift, right? You see this icon right here. If I click on this chevron, you can of course see that I have my keyframes ready. But if I double click on it, I will be taken back to a sub scene, right? So this is my main scene, but then within my main scene, I have my groovy gift. Now, if I want to individually edit any of these elements, I will open up my sub scene where I can individually edit all of these outlines, right? So if I click on this eye icon, you'd realize that I will be able to change all of these things one by one. Now, this is extremely valuable because if you were to notice, if I go to my properties panel, you can realize that if I click on any of these groups, I can individually change how they look, right? So maybe if I want to change the color of this box, I can simply go and one by one change all of these elements, right? I can choose the eyedropper tool. Maybe I can make this a bit darker, maybe go to the top one and again go click on the eyedropper and choose this color right here. So now in this case, I have now changed the gift box. Maybe you have a specific brand color, right? So in all of those cases, you need these modifications and it just becomes so easy to make these assets branded according to your own guidelines. Now, the way animations work is very simple. And for that, you need to understand the basics of keyframes. I will go to my shape tools, simply select a star, and let's just say I want to shrink this star, right? So I will go here and do you see all of these different transformation options? Do you see that there's this diamond symbol right here? If I click on add keyframe, you'd realize that I have now told LottieCreator that this star has to be at this specific spot. Now, if I click on any of these three dots, you'd realize that I can change scale, opacity, rotation, basically any of these options, right? So if I go and click on scale, I will now see those options right here. And if I click on this toggle right here, it would just delete the keyframe. But keyframe is just me telling the creator that this is a fixed location and fixed size, and eventually with another keyframe we will make changes to it, right? So if I go here back again to these icons and click on scale, let's just move a bit ahead, maybe to say 1 second, and I can just move the star right here. And now what I can do is I can click on the chain icon so that we scale proportionately, and maybe we can just take the star and just keep it here in the center. So you'd notice that it's just animating, right? Now I can always keep the star here at the bottom, so it would just probably scale in that way. And sometimes you'd notice that it's glitching a bit. That's because I've added two keyframes that are too close to each other. So that's a very common mistake that people make, right? And I can also go to a point where I can add an opacity keyframe as well. So by default, it can be on 0 opacity. And once I come to second one, I'll just make it 100%, right? So it would just fade in, right? It would stay for a while, and then I can probably take this keyframe, copy it and paste it here. And you just need to make sure that you allow the pasting. So I can take these keyframes and very easily use my shortcut of Command C and Command V to paste them together. And what I can do is I can choose my main scene and say that my duration is just for 3 seconds. So I can basically trim the entire thing to 3 seconds. And if I select the looping feature, so right now it is disabled, but I can enable it and play it, you'd realize that the star would sort of come and just loop. Now what you can also do is that you can keep these states for a second. So maybe I can copy and just put these things right here. And once I do that, the star would come, stay for a second, and then go away, right? And of course, you can move these around very, very easily. So what you can do is you can sort of put these things here. I can probably take these ones and put them here as well. And now what we'll do is that we can shrink the entire scene. And now when I play it, you realize that the star comes and just goes away, right? So it's just a very, very simple way of adding more life. But as I said, moving forward, you won't need to put in so much of effort in adding all of these keyframes, because eventually Motion Copilot will do all of it very, very easily. Now, one very important thing to note is that you need to organize your files very, very clearly. So I'll just put this as, say, stars, and you don't have to save any of these files because obviously this is running on cloud. Now, the important thing to understand here is that all of these animations add a lot of visual relief to your experience, right? So you can either use assets from your own apps and put them in LottieCreator and then use Motion Copilot to add life to them. Otherwise, you can always use their premium animations. And we will eventually understand how do you export them. So once I click on export, it will be exported into this new format called .lottie format, which is way lighter than your GIFs and MP4s. But before we get into the exporting part, I just want to make sure that we cover the basics. So with that, we finish chapter number 1, and in chapter number 2, we will create our first Lottie animation using basic shapes and assets. Alright, so the most common use case that people like is either loading or like an achievement symbol, right? So what we can do is we can take this one right here, like a trophy. And what I can do is I can put it here on my canvas. And I can also take this loading animation right here, or let's just say I'll go to search. I'll probably search for the word loading, and let's take this simple one. So what I can do is I can first put the loading symbol, right? And let it stay here. And as soon as the loading is done, we can simply extend the scene duration. So maybe I can extend it from 3 seconds to 6 seconds. I can take my trophy and probably just show the trophy, right? So my goal here is that maybe someone is creating a gaming app and then the loading disappears and then you have the trophy coming in, right? So the entire animation becomes like the single thing. And I will choose my main scene and make sure that the duration is just, 4 seconds. So I'll just go here and select 4. And what we can do is we can probably put an opacity keyframe right here. So I will make this at 0%. I'll move, say, a few frames ahead, make this 100%, then go again to my ending of the animation, put another keyframe, make it 0, go here, make this 100%. So what is happening right here? We go from 0 to 100, it loads for a while, goes from 100 to 0, and then you have your trophy. By the way, when you see these dots, it basically means that there is transparency here. So there's no color here, right? Now I want this trophy to come, but also move out, right? So I can simply go to my animation presets. Now I can choose any of these pre-made filters, but I would strongly recommend you to use Motion Copilot for this, right? So what if I want this to pop out and fade out, right? Now it's extremely important that you don't just type the animation effect, but you also say add pop out and fade out effect, right? And what you need to do is you need to select enter. And while it is thinking about that animation, just make sure that you have your trophy selected. So you can see how it is sort of fading in and then it sort of fades out. Now, of course, it's not necessary that anytime you put in a prompt, you would get exactly what you want. So it's like an iterative process. Now, in a lot of cases, you might get 80% of your ideal animation from Motion Copilot, but you can always make your own changes, right? So that is how you and Motion Copilot can work together to make really, really interesting animations. Now, if any of you have worked with After Effects, you know how difficult it is to make something like this and export them into a GIF and sort of, send it to your developers. Because number one, After Effects is just too complicated to learn in the first place. And you need a good enough computer to run it smoothly. Now, one important concept that I want to show is of the parent and child. So when you look at this specific scene right here, you'd realize that if I double click on it, I would enter a different subscene. Now, when I come to this subscene itself, you'd realize that I have one shape layer, and once I click on this accordion, I have more objects inside of it. This thing right here is called the parent layer, and this thing is called the child. Now the reason why I'm explaining you this is because if you make any modifications to the parent layer, it will affect the child. But if you make any changes to one of the children, it won't affect the other children. So it's a very common concept that we see in any other tool out there, but I just thought I'll let you know that this exists here as well. The next thing I want to show you is trim paths. So what I'll do is I'll select a star again because that example is my favorite. And let me just keep this star right here. In my poly star, you'd realize that I have a child which is called star path. Now on the right side, we have a bunch of different options where I can make this star sharper. You can change the border radii, whether it's the internal border radii or the outer border radii. So let's just say I want to have something which is just sharp, and I can also add a bunch of vertices. And if I click on convert path, I can simply go to that dialog. And now the crazy part here is that if I select trim path, you'd realize that I can actually remove all of these parts one by one. So can you see what's happening? It's sort of like creating this jittery effect. It's almost like it's writing down all of these things one by one. Now, if I go on edit path again, you'd notice that it has converted this into vertices, right? So can you see how each vertex is now available for my editing? And I can trim these paths again in whatever way I want. Now, of course, the trim path feature is useful in many ways. Sometimes you just want to have a very specific object appear with time, right? So if I have my rectangle right here, and let's just say I want to add a stroke, I can simply make sure that this stroke appears in a specific duration. So if I go and click on convert path, let me just select on don't show this message again. I can simply select trim path, and can you see how it's appearing? Now, of course, sometimes the appearance might look weird simply because you don't like the way the fill comes in. Now, in cases where you don't want a fill, you can simply go to appearance, click on the kebab menu and delete the fill. Now, when you go back to your path, you'd realize that now when I trim it, it is sort of creating this very interesting boundary, right? So you can actually have shapes come into life very easily. So let's just say I go to any of these shapes. Let's just say I go to this gift right here, right? Maybe I take this gift, maybe I want to scale it right here. Now the cool thing here is that if I double click on this scene, I will enter in my sub scene. And of course, this thing has like a bunch of outlines, right? So if I just want to show you something which is just for a specific use case, I can go to any of these groups, or maybe go to this label right here and go to this path right here. And once I do that, I can click on edit path and then go to trim path and then just change it this way. So can you see how it's sort of like coming together? Because all of those vertices are following. So when I say trim start, it is basically helping me move the starting point of those vertices. When I do trim end, it is helping me move back. So by default, it is always 100% at the end. But once I reverse it, you'd realize that it is going back to its starting point. So there's a lot of interesting things that you can do. And in the upcoming episodes, we will understand how do you even use trim paths? How do you use it in ways where it makes more sense in the experience? But in today's session, I just wanted to show you how you can take a basic shape and how you can edit it as a path where you can take different vertices, and then how can you trim those paths. Now, none of this would make sense until unless we create some examples. So let's start with something which is very basic. Let's create a heart animation. So let's just say you're trying to make a like feature, right? And you want to have like this heart thing right here. And basically it just looks pretty simple, right? Now what you can do is you can always add some stars or some glitter sort of a thing, right? So you can always have, a bunch of these templates coming in. I can probably overlay both of these templates on top of each other, right? So when somebody clicks on your heart, it can basically come up in this cute fancy way. So my heart can come here. I can probably put it this way, and maybe the heart can come in the center. And then once I play these together, you'd see that there's this pulse, right? But the pulse should be behind my heart. So let me just take my heart and put it here on the very top, and I can always align it. So let's just say I take these stars, I align those as well, and let's see how it works. Now, can you see how my scene is longer than my animation? What I can do is I can choose this point, and I can always extend my heart and go here and select my main scene. And this time, let me just put the duration to 2, and let's see how it looks now. So it sort of just comes, by the way, by default. What I can do is I can just go to my motion Copilot and say add fade in and press enter. So now my heart would sort of like just fade in because I don't want it to completely come instantly. Once you've logged your preview, I will simply click on apply animation and then you'll have your heart set. Once you click on apply, your heart will then fade in very, very easily. Okay, so now we have something which is quite interesting. So you can see how we have one animation added to the scene and then you have some more animations right inside the heart as well, right? So when I go to my love shape, you'd notice that I have a bunch of keyframes that are already added, right? And I really like how the stars look. So this is pretty sorted. Let me rename this file as heart as well. Now, do you remember that at the very start of this episode, I told you that you can actually win a certificate delivered right to your doorsteps? What you need to do is you need to create a basketball animation. And let me give you a hint of how you can do it. So what I'll do is I'll go here and create a new file. So it would open up into a new tab. Let me close this pop-up right here. Now you can either use AI prompt to vector, or you can simply go to discover animations, or you can always, upload your own assets. I would be really impressed if you put your own assets. And if I go and select basketball, you realize that there are a bunch of basketballs, right? So I want you to create like a nice bouncing basketball animation, but from scratch, right? So can you see how this one has like a shadow? But even here, the animations are slightly too slow. And you can also see that the lines are also extending. I want you to make one from scratch. Now it can be a basketball, it could be a soccer ball, it could be an ellipse as well. But what I want you to do is that I want you to use this specific feature where you can take any object, you can either use Motion Copilot or use keyframes on your own and just make a very basic animation. Now to win a certificate, you need to do three things. You need to document all your learnings from this video in simple language and comment them right below. Then you need to create your first Lottie animation and post a screenshot of your LottieCreator file. For example, this thing right here is my LottieCreator workspace. You can simply take a screenshot. You can export an MP4 of your LottieCreator file and post it on LinkedIn or on Instagram and then just tag me and Lottie Files. And just make sure that you email a link to your social media post and a link to your Lottie file to aditi@anshmara.com. This competition is open till 15 days from now. You need to send your entries on time. Top 24 students will be selected. This competition is valid for viewers living in India. More details are in the description and pinned comments. Now there's one thing that I wanted to discuss, which was around animation presets, right? So let's just say I create any of these boxes. I have three categories, right? And we discussed this in chapter 1 that we have in, highlight, and then out. When I say in, it basically means that I can choose a speed and basically decide how my object would appear. When I go to highlight, I can basically have more elements to sort of add more flair, right? So sometimes you don't want the object to go away. You just want to add some sort of an effect, right? So it can just stay in that spot and do something to get more attention. And I can go on out again and simply select something like slide out to bottom. So that way, when you use all of these presets together, you can not only have things come in, but you can have your objects behave in a specific way and then easily transition out of your frame. Now, I'm pretty sure you're wondering, Ansh, once we have created all of these files, how do you even access them? For that, you would have to go to your dashboard, and this is how it would probably look like. So if I go to any of my previous files, I just have to click on them once and it would open up this preview right here. Now, this section is extremely powerful because this is where you can collaborate with other team members. This is where you can actually test how your file would look inside your app using mockups. What you see here is actually your final scene. One important recommendation is that before you see your files here in your preview panel, make sure that you create a scene out of them. What do I mean by that? When I have all of my ellipses and boxes ready, let's just say I have one rectangle, I have one ellipse right here. What you need to do is you need to select all of them, right click and select create scene. It's just a good recommendation because then all of your files remain in one single place. And then once you have created everything into a simple scene, make sure that your duration is also sorted so that it looks good when you're looping in. You don't want any extra gaps. And then you should come to a preview for your export. So now that we have understood how to create your first Lottie animation, let's move on to chapter number 3, where we will understand how do you export this. Let me give you a tour of everything that is happening here. First of all, I can see what project that I'm working on. If I go to search, I can search through multiple files. If I click on my dashboard, I'll go back to where my files were. If I click on premium animations, I will have access to a bunch of interesting, visual effects and motion graphics that I can use. This is not available in the free plan. So if you're an individual, you can get the pro plan for $20 per month. Let us go back to our animation. If I go to my profile, I can always have my public animations. I can also have my own collections. So if you've been, downloading or liking any specific files, you can always access them. By the way, if you go to Lottie Files, you can always find free animations as well. So it's not necessary for you to just use the premium ones. Let's just say I've searched loader here. In my filters, I can only select free, and then I can edit any of these files right inside my LottieCreator. So you can take any of these loaders and simply add your own color to it. Now you can obviously see how I can see my frame rate, which is I think 60 frames. Now right in the center, you can see my animation. There is no background at all. If I go to my comments, I can see my team members putting any comments. I haven't added someone here. So if I click on share, I can actually add my team members, so they will have access to either edit or just comment. If I go to color palette, this is a very cool feature. I can actually switch between different color palettes, right? So if you have one animation that you want to use across different brands, you can create those palettes and see how your same animation will look across different brand themes. Now, if I click on handoff and embed, this is where all the developers will find every single resource and plugin that they need to embed their Lottie file into a website or into their apps or whatever it is that they're developing. So you will have your embeddable HTML code. You will have all of the documentations that you need for iOS, Android, Wix, Webflow. All of their plugins and integrations are also available in one single place. So if you're creating a website either on Framer or Webflow, they have dedicated plugins that help you access Lottie files right inside your workspace, so you don't have to escape. Now, when you go to transparency grid, you'll understand what all is going to be transparent in your animation. You can always check out with different background colors. So if I switch off transparency grid and maybe check it, with a bunch of different background colors, you'll understand how this animation would look, sometimes because you want to check how it would be accessible across different colors. Now, once I close this, what you can also do is that you can select test animation for mobile, and you can scan this QR code using the Lottie Files app and actually see it in your phone. You can also test this animation on multiple devices, and you can test it across multiple players as well, right? So when you create animations, sometimes you just have to use it in different formats, right? So Lottie Web is a different format. Then there are different versions within Lottie Web as well. So it completely depends on how you have coded the entire website. It sort of depends on different versions of your app or your website. Premium users have this cool feature where if you have a bunch of animations, that need review or they're approved, you can always put those statuses as well. If I click on segments and mockups, you will be able to see your exact animation on a specific device. So if I click on add mockup, I can actually see how this exact file would look on a mobile, how it would look on a desktop, how it would look on a tablet. You can change the background color as well. So there are like so many things that you can do to make sure that you don't make any mistakes once you release the final app. If you click on download and export, by default, you will be able to download the Lottie JSON file. But if you want your file size to reduce even further, you can have the same animation at a 19% smaller size than your Lottie JSON by using the optimized Lottie JSON. And if you use .lottie, again, there's a very, very compressed format. But even within .lottie, you have a optimized .lottie, which is 70% smaller than Lottie JSON. And of course, when you're doing your entire social media post, you can always download the same animation in an MP4 format. Sometimes some people also require a web format or a GIF format. So all of those things are available as well in case you specifically need them. Once I click on share, just below invite others, I have an option to share this with anyone. So if I click on enable sharing link, I'll get a URL that I can share with anyone. But it always have an expiry date. So please make sure that if you want your link to stay for another 7 days, you need to upgrade to a better plan. I can also publish it to the community where other people can also use it. And if you click on handoff and embed, you'll realize that you have all of your embeddable URLs and your iframe code easily accessible to copy. Let me know in the comment sections if this video helped you, and if you'd want more detailed videos on Lottie Files. where we can go deeper into motion design and interaction design. Make sure you finish your homework on time because you can win a beautiful certificate, that too without paying anything. If you're here for the first time, make sure you click on subscribe and hit the bell icon right now so that you keep learning with us. More than 80% of you are missing out on our videos because you still haven't clicked on subscribe. We regularly make free courses on ChatGPT, prompt engineering, Midjourney, and a lot more. We've been training companies, corporations, and institutions all around the world. And this YouTube channel is there to help those students who cannot attend our live sessions. We've launched free platforms like howtoprompt.in to learn about AI and learnuiux.in to learn about Figma, product design, and design systems. With that being said, I hope that you're taking care of your mind and body. This is your dost Ansh Mehra signing out. If you want to learn web development or app design for free, then these two videos right here will help you get started. I've explained all the basics from scratch.